Order, it being 6:35 on the 12th of October. So I'll call a meeting to order and roll call, Michael Pratt, and Richard Smith, and Gar Morse, Sandy Bodmer Turner,
Here.
Danny Harrison,
Here, there, whatever.
Denny Hall.
Here.
Sue Philbrick is not here, and Sarah Mellish is not here either.
But Denny said he was here. So-
He's here.
Oh, that's great.
Denny's
He found
here.
a way to get it.
So he's here. Okay, first item on the agenda is acknowledgement of receipt of correspondence. Gail, what have we got?
Whatever I had, I forwarded to everybody, and I'm sorry I didn't make a list.
Well, okay, let's see, I'm recalling, notes from,
Miss Ivani.
Miss Giovanni and Liz Colbert.
That there were they both submitted something. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I don't think there was anything else.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an updated schedule. I sent one out to everybody. It is, of course, as we go further out, it gets more tentative, but at least it's a series of events that are going to be happening over the next several months. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns or comments about it.
No, it's nice to see the list of done.
Yes. I'll be, before every meeting, I'll send out a revised schedule. Try to update the dates accordingly. Okay. The next thing is the questions that I had posed back in September for the task force to keep in mind as we move along. Some of you have drafted responses to these questions, which is helpful and interesting. I don't think it has to get done right away. We're certainly free to change our answers as we go along. I don't know if anyone wants to add any questions to this. That would be perfectly acceptable also.
Would you prefer us to just forward them to, I haven't forwarded mine to you yet. Would it be better use of our time if I just do that?
Well, I think you have to send it to Gail and she can distribute it to everybody.
Oh, okay.
I think that's probably the way to do it. And again, it's really informal. It's not meant to be it's not a test.
Yeah, no, I think it's a useful list of focus points.
Yeah. Taking the sense of the.
Yeah, well, I think that's important to do. And I think at the next meeting, maybe I'll sort of summarize where people seem to be grouping their thoughts. If that's the way to put it. Okay, well, now let's go to the main topic of this evening's meeting, which is a proposal for consulting services that the town received a week ago. And Richard and Gar and I met with Greg and we interviewed Emily Innes, who's the proposer. She went in a combination with a firm called RKG, which is a bigger company than hers. I don't know, Richard and Gar, can you sort of summarize your thoughts on the interview?
Well, I had a generally positive impression of her. I do not like consultants because I think they tend to be people that, groups lean on and don't get much response from. But so I was negatively inclined when I started, and I found her to be remarkably clear in her answers. She didn't use a lot of acronyms or techno speak. So I liked the way she answered. She obviously is familiar with the agency that we're dealing with, which used to be called the DHCD and is now called something else. And so I was pretty impressed, notwithstanding my preliminary adverse attitude. I asked her a couple of relevant questions for me, and she answered them fairly directly. So I'm, you know, I'm sort of inclined to go along with it.
Okay, Richard?
I describe my reaction as that I heartily endorse the inevitable, because we only had one applicant. It disturbs me that we only had one applicant. But I think we can all understand the reason, because this is a new law. There's a lot of people looking for consultants, and that's the way it is. I have the sense myself that her viewpoint on what constitutes a good solution is not necessarily the same as what I would constitute a good solution. I don't know how that'll pan out with the rest of the task force or the town. I do think that she seems to have, herself at least, the technical skills and understanding of the zoning code to be of assistance to us, and that's what it's all about. But I left it thinking, boy, we'd better really have our ducks in a row here to decide what we find to be the best solution, because what they find to be the best solution may be a different set of goals than this town has.
It was just one applicant?
Just one applicant, that's right.
Eight RFQs went out.
So the reason that probably happened is there are 177 towns in the same position we are. And there are
Supply,
probably,
demand imbalance, demand is through the roof. supply
Right.
is what it
exactly,
is.
so we're, in a way, we're lucky to have one, and she seemed very competent, I would say. And seemed-
Well,
Is
for
it a-
instance,
Is it a money thing where?
Well, the money thing is an interesting thing, because this is a fixed price contract. But
and the price is $50,000, I
Yeah.
believe.
That's right,
and when you get down, it's a fixed price contract, so anybody who's ever had a fixed price contract knows that that means you're gonna get pushback if you draw too much on services, and this is a very squishy project, where the demand for services that comes from us could vary wildly depending upon how we pursue our goals. And I asked her that question, and, you know, she gave me the best answer she could. There really is no good answer for it. She gave me the answer.
I have no idea the market value for a contract of this. I don't know if 50 grand is a lot or a little or it's spot on, but I guess my question would be, when we created or drafted the RFQs, what did we use as a basis? Like,
so the Betsy drafted it, I think she probably used a template from the state to do it, and I reviewed it, and I think Richard looked at it also. Seemed to cover the basis of, in terms of a request for proposals. It seemed to cover all the things that we would need to have happen.
so to your point, there's 177 or whatever the number is towns that are all looking for this help. And so is it fair to say that our RFQ looked pretty similar to all those other towns
I think
without
so.
having looked at them? But
Yeah, I think it probably did. I think everyone was asking for the same thing. She is from Newburyport, and she's worked a lot with coastal communities, like Marblehead and Beverly and so forth. So I think that's why she was willing to submit a proposal here.
Honestly, I think the best guide in this case is probably reputation, because given the fact that we don't truly know the skills set there, we just know that she came across well. We don't truly know what depth of services they're going to provide, because when you look at the scope of services and you look at the proposal, it could be a wide variety. There's a lot of room in there for really fantastic service and minimally adequate service. And Greg said he got glowing reports, references.
we suggested that he call some other towns to see what their experience was.
Yeah, and everyone thinks, he said that everyone he talked to gave a glowing recommendation.
which is great, but just to be clear, the prior work that this person or organization did was not obviously specifically on this subject
I
matter.
asked that question.
No,
Well, I think, didn't
she has done, she's worked
She
with
did the sample zoning code.
like 5 MBTA communities.
And they had an earlier deadline.
Some of them,
She's close to bringing several to. So she's
So she
run through the
has-
cycle on.
She has done.
she has done this. Yeah, So, I should summarize what exactly she would do for us. And the way she puts it, the first and most important thing is to decide on what the district is. Because that kind of sets the tone for everything else we're trying to do. So what she can do with her computer model, with the state's computer model, is test various district sizes and configurations to see how close to compliance we already are. And I pointed out to her that we're not going to be very compliant because we don't allow multifamily housing here at all anyway. And she said, that's fine. So then we can just make some assumptions about what we might be willing to do. And based on those assumptions, she can tell us whether this district or that district is going to be close or far away from compliance.
Well, the compliance model requires that you select an area from the map, and that you then answer a whole series of questions, including what your setbacks are, whether you allow zoning,
Coverage.
whether you how many parking spaces you allow, and so forth. We can do all of that.
Yeah,
And what it's going to tell us is we're not close.
it's probably what's gonna tell us, but it will tell us that if we do something in the LCD, that's one thing, whereas if we do it in the downtown, it's gonna be something else.
I know it's beating a dead horse, but when you say we're not compliant because we don't allow multifamily housing, that's that whole 5 parking spaces thing, right?
That's part of it, but I mean, in general, in the downtown, you're allowed to convert a single family house to a 3-family. So that technically complies. But that's a rare instance, and, we're talking about parcel sizes of 10 acres down to 3,000 square feet. So it's, if you were just to say a 3-family house on a 6,000 square foot lot, well, yeah, there might be 10.
I thought it was more technically we comply, but practically it doesn't work simply because
Yes.
the size of a lot of these lots
Yeah,
would not allow.
That's what I would
but
say.
I have consistently disagreed. The zoning for the general district requires 5 parking spaces for a 3-family. If it requires 5 spaces for a 3-family, then it doesn't, it requires 5 spaces for a 3-family. It would take a zoning change for it to go to 3-family. You could make a zoning change anywhere. So what's different about that zoning change? So that's why I really take issue with that idea that we gloss over and say the general district allows 3 families.
But we
So you're
do
saying,
have,
I don't know what you're saying. You're saying it's technically compliant or technically not, or?
I'm saying that it if you were to feed into that model, and we'll find out soon enough, if you were to feed into that model, 3 families in the general district.
5
allowed,
parking
And
spaces.
they require 5 parking spaces.
You wouldn't
It's
be-
not gonna come close. Because there's not enough land.
but I have a building that has 7 residential units and 7 parking spaces. It was built before there was any zoning,
Mhm.
and nobody's called me up and said, you gotta tear your building
And
down.
Gar,
Obviously.
but Gar, it's irrelevant to this
I
process.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
So let me go on with what her scope of services would be. So one would be to help us figure out what the districts are going to be. The second thing she can do is help us actually write the zoning code, the language, because that's what she does. To do all the things we want to do, we can include design controls, height restrictions, parking requirements, all that she can put into the proper language so we get a bylaw out of it. The third thing that she's very good at doing is engaging with the community. She's used to dealing with opposition for things. She's used to explaining what this MBTA thing is all about and trying to engage the community in that effort. Then her partner team, RKG Associates, they specialize in economic feasibility, so they can do economic analysis of what the zoning change might be in terms of the town's fiscal situation, and also help us with getting approval to do, say, 20% affordable units in the district, and the retail on the first floor, but the state requires there'd be some economic feasibility to do.
So when they do that economic feasibility, what kind of inputs do they put? Obviously, property tax revenue on one
Okay.
side.
Schools, sewer, police,
Yeah, they'll figure
fire,
out all that.
living, water.
Soup to nuts. everything.
That's what I would say.
I mean, that's what I would hope. I just.
Yeah, that's what we
you
would
know, I would
Yeah.
hope, you know,
Well, we'll
Absolutely.
find out.
you never know.
And we kind of asked that question. We said,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and we said sewer, water, blah, blah, you know, all of, and she said, yeah.
And the biggest, obviously, the biggest, subjective input to that is gonna be the schools.
Right,
In the sense that, right, you're gonna have to pro forma.
more kids.
And well, you're gonna have to
Or-
assume, like,
Right.
okay, every 2-bedroom apartment has
Somebody
2
can-
kids, or 1-bedroom apartment has 0, or,
Yeah, exactly, that's
something
right,
like
that's
that.
what they do.
Mhm. The thing I was encouraged about reading her proposal was that she and RKG both have worked with the state, and they helped to design the compliance modeling and also helped to design the sample zoning. So they're very familiar.
I basically view them as an extension of the state.
Dealing with the enemy.
No, I don't, I'm not saying it's the enemy, I'm
No,
just saying.
I know.
They
No.
can be a good bridge for
But
us.
they're not babes in the woods. you
Right,
know.
right.
They know what's going on.
And they can be a bridge depending on how we manage them.
They also offered, and I think this is important for us to figure out what we're gonna do with. They offered, or we requested, and they offered a pricing on some follow-ons, including a forms-based zoning follow-on, and
It's like historic stuff.
no, it's more,
It's more specific.
what, not, no flat roofs, what's
Oh,
the,
okay, okay.
what are the materials that are gonna be used, what do we allow? It's gonna affect what the buildings look like as opposed to what the setbacks are. And-
So is it more of a design, is form-based zoning more of a kind of strict design standard?
Yeah, basically, it looks at every lot and says, this would be the best kind of building and use on that lot.
Wow.
Are most of these consultant contracts fixed price ones? Or-
Yeah, they probably are, yes.
I would think most towns would find it hard to budget if it wasn't, right?
But to your point, it's fixed price, which means there's clearly an implicit or assumed number of hours, right? Baked in there, and to your point, once you hit that. Right,
Yeah,
you use the contract's full, 50 grand, done,
it's gonna be
right?
harder and harder to get in.
So what she promised was, as long as they don't change the scope of the work significantly, she's gonna stay with her fixed price.
Is there stated hours in there or no?
No. Just as for the work that has to get done.
There's an hourly
But that-
quote, there's an implicit one, because
There is,
there's a
yeah,
quote. by
that's-
hour-
Hourly rates.
An hourly
But
rate.
you don't know
folks, there.
who's doing what. There's an hourly rate for each of the
But you
different
don't-
kinds of people in each
Okay, but
firm.
what are those 2 rates?
They're
It's in the proposal, but I mean, I think it was $200 and
It's around
$150
$200
or something for the associates or something.
Yeah.
Kind of in that, it wasn't like $800 an hour.
Yeah, no, I was gonna pull 200 out of thin air. If I didn't
Yeah,
have
Well,
it
yeah.
to use.
I think that's about where it was, something like that.
That was the top. That was
Yeah.
kind of 225 and 250 were for the
It didn't,
principal.
So if I use 200, which sounds like I'm rounding down,
Well, then there's 100, 125, 170
for the,
for the staff.
Yeah.
work fees.
200, right?
Mhm.
So 5 times 200 is 1,000, 50,000, right? So 50 times 5, so 250 hours.
It's not a lot of hours.
No, I wouldn't, but
On the other hand, if these people don't know what they're talking about, I guess my point is, they ought to know a lot of stuff anyway, that they don't have to use hours to figure out, like they ought to know the model like this, because they wrote it. So if they charge us, 12 hours, read model, I'd go, wait a minute, you know what I mean?
mhm.
So, I mean, at least we're dealing with somebody who has told us they know what they're doing. So, I had the feeling that maybe I'm completely wrong, that she thinks she can help us within that envelope. That was sort of,
It's probably in here as well, but what are some of the other towns that she's worked on 48.
So let's see if we can remember the.
Littleton, Middleton,
Marblehead,
Amesbury, Methuen, Arlington. Where's the
Yeah, they're
list?
in-
These are
Yeah.
all 48. Wow.
Yeah, everybody who,
So some towns had a much earlier deadline.
Yeah, if they had a subway stop, they had to do it at the end of this year.
we got a lighter task because it's commuter rail.
When I was just hearing those towns and none of them, other than maybe Arlington has a subway stop.
There was Somerville, I think was one.
But like, Amesbury,
Cohasset,
Great, they're a commuter rail.
they're commuter rail now, so.
gotta put my hand up.
Yes, Kim.
Cohasset was one of her towns. Shirley was one of her towns.
no, I don't think either one of those have subways.
Right, exactly. I mean, the only subway towns are maybe, I'm not even sure. I don't even think Arlington, but Somerville, yes. I
Yeah, Arlington has the Alewife from station, which is the end of the road.
think it's technically Cambridge, but yeah, it could be.
I don't think she was saying hire me because I've dealt with these towns that have subway stops. She was just giving that as an example of.
I think Littleton has already completed their compliance, even though they're a railroad town.
Yeah, she mentioned that some towns have moved right ahead and done because it was easy for them.
I also asked her to what extent towns had done their own designation of areas before we went to it. And she indicated that to a good extent they have.
Some certainly have, some she said were clueless and
Right.
starting from scratch, so.
So the work you've done though is very useful,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
which is a big head
Yes.
start.
So the other thing that's problematic for us is we don't have a town planner. We're gonna have to rely more heavily on Greg and on these consultants to provide us with the information we need to be able to make good decisions.
What's the status there? Like, I know Betsy leaving, but
Betsy's left, and Greg had made an offer apparently to another person who turned it down because she wanted more money.
no, I know that as well, but
So now
what's
he's,
the plan B or C?
so he's going back out. He's gonna look for a short-term consultant and urban planner again. He's got lots of different things he's trying out. But in the meantime, we're left. For our own business here.
And Betsy, I think Betsy said she might be able to come back in 6 or 8 weeks, but still. It's gonna be a lot of water over the dam by then.
So in terms of voting for or against or whatever, this particular, I mean, number one, it sounds moot because there's only one. So you're either saying yay or nothing. I
Yeah.
guess. That's-
Well,
That's
if
what
she
you're-
was bad, you'd say no.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying your only choice. It's not like you can choose between 3 or 4 different.
That's right.
Your choice is yes to this or
No.
no, which means nothing.
That's
Those are your 2 choices.
And we wouldn't know, we have no idea when we would find another person ready to support another RFQ, and we don't
Right.
really have a
Time.
great reason to turn it down.
No, I mean, she's a valid.
Yeah.
Legitimate candidate with knowledge. If she were a total numbskull and, didn't know what she was talking about and came in from West No Place, then I'd say, we don't need this.
No, I
But-
agree, and maybe
No.
she's the best ever. It's just whenever I do an RFQ, I like to see multiple
Yeah.
bids so that you feel better that you're picking the best choice. Yes.
Yeah, we
That was
all
our
do.
I
hope.
quite
We all
agree.
like that.
Quite agree.
I always felt good when I was the only proposal.
Right,
As the
exactly.
bidder, you were in her shoes.
You changes on that before I send it out.
Eddie, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm sorry, were you asking me?
No, I'm asking you for your opinion on this.
Well, it sounds to me like we don't have a lot of choices to choose from, and if this person is competent or apparently competent, I would maybe suggest talking to some of the towns that she cited as that she's working for, just to make sure that Gar's impression is accurate. Aside from that, we obviously need help. There's only one, I'm uncomfortable with just one, but if that's what we have, that's what we got. So let's move on it.
Okay, yeah, no, Greg did check with references and talked to a lot of these towns, and they all gave glowing recommendations, so.
And I think I heard the question even before meeting was called to order, but I'll ask it again. We can vote, but really, we're just advising, we're not the actual decision maker, is that right?
That's correct, it's the town put out the RFP or the RFQ and asked us to participate. Greg asked us to participate, so
So the select board is the ultimate decision?
I think Greg makes the call himself, that's a town.
Mhm.
Is that right, Ann?
Yeah, Greg is the hiring authority.
Well, I would.
I'm sure he'll
propose-
listen to your,
Yeah,
Your
I think he would-
advice.
He probably would not sign the contract if we all unanimously said no, that's for sure.
So I would propose we recommend to the administrator that he move forward. I would say that he needs to look at the fixed price contract with the understanding that some metric is provided as to the number of hours spent. And that if the called for number of hours is not spent, that we get a savings against that fixed price, which is something I've done with many contractors and other consultants over the years, and that's a perfectly reasonable thing, and it's not totally gratuitous, it's, you know.
Yeah, and I think that would go the other way too, then let us know if we're using up too many.
Absolutely.
hours.
Absolutely,
Is that a motion, Gar?
that's a motion, that's a proposal or a motion or
I just had one quick follow-up question on your point, which is logistically, like, when would this start? And then to your point, who's gonna be the primary
Contact.
contact
Oh.
over here if this starts in a week? I'm just making that up, and then we don't have a town planner in a week, like, how does that work?
That's a great question.
That is a good question. So Greg is the pro tem planner, so he would be the contact. Emily Innes herself said she would be the prime contact for their operation. And they'd be ready to start as soon as we get a contract worked out, as I said.
If we're doing anything in this task force, we're going to be the significant part of the contract,
Absolutely.
because the obvious initial process here, which is picking the zoning area, I mean, it's not Greg.
No, Greg is gonna, absolutely.
So I don't really, I don't mean to push back, because I'm just not sure that that's really who the primary contact is gonna
Well,
be.
Greg's got to take orders from Chris, I think, as.
Well,
Can
on
she
behalf-
talk to
Okay.
Greg? I mean, can you be the
Sure,
contact?
sure, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I guess I misunderstood the question. I think the.
okay. I think it's appropriate that Greg be the person who track hours, and the mechanics of it. The actual work obviously should be going through Chris and the board and the committee or the task force.
Took the words right out of my mouth, and thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect sense.
Okay.
So that'd be regardless of whether we had a full-time planner or not.
Let's face that when we face it.
So the moot question right now.
Just a big problem I'm illuminating, I guess, that's all.
It is a big problem,
Sure is.
but we can't
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 stop.
stop the world
Cannot
because we don't
stop.
have a planner. We gotta grapple with the realities.
She mentioned,
What we got here.
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. And she mentioned, by the way, that she worked with a number of communities that didn't have planners. It's not the first time she's run into this.
It's just surprising hearing those towns rattle off, because they sound on the average a lot bigger than us, but.
Okay, so Garth made a motion.
Second,
Any discussion on this?
Could I just hear the motion again?
I move that we recommend to the administrator that he move forward in enlisting or putting Innis and RKG, on the contract. Moving ahead with it.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Alright, should we take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Looks like
Anne
it's
says yes.
unanimous.
Right.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is the community forum to be held on Saturday at 10 o'clock. I had a meeting with Tiffany yesterday. We went over how we hope this will work. The weather is supposed to be okay in the morning. So what's gonna happen is there'll be some chairs set out in front of town hall. There'll be coffee and pastry served. There'll be some posters that kind of explain some of these things. There'll be handouts of the frequently asked questions document that people can take with them. I'm gonna give a brief talk, introduce members of the task force. Talk about what our mission is. Then it'll be open for questions and answers from the public, and then I hope all of you can participate in that. And then I'd like to take people on a little walking tour of downtown so they can, I thought we'd start off by walking down Elm Street and looking at Sawmill Circle and Powder House Lane. And then walking down Central Street to look at the property of Union Street. And then maybe past your place, Garth, people are still walking with us. And then down to 12 Summer Street as an example of the kinds of design that we're hoping we can instill here.
Yeah, that sounds good. Tiffany has some big boards,
Yeah,
right?
she's got some-
Maps and stuff. that look-
Mhm.
You know,
I hope we have a turnout.
well, if we don't, that'll be instructive also.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of people show up at town meetings and say, why wasn't I ever told about this? You know, I'm being asked to vote. Nobody ever told me about this. We gotta make an effort to say, come on.
Well, where and how
Okay.
did we notify the town?
So it's on social media, it's in the Cricket, it's
Social media, the Manchester Facebook
Manchester
page.
Facebook page,
It went out with the tide,
and that was the tide.
so to speak.
Yeah, so hopefully people know about it.
Yeah, I don't know, was it in the bill insert?
Yeah, it was.
It
yeah.
was, so, yeah, so everybody got a notice.
Everybody who pays taxes.
Yes,
Yeah. And doesn't have a mortgage that has an escrow.
Oh, where the bill goes to the bank.
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, that's-
which is most everybody.
Maybe we'll get some bankers to show up. That was a joke, sorry.
Well, I would just express again my hope that we do not make too big an effort to make light of the impact of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's very much the wrong tack for us to take right now. Better to have people surprised to the upside than the down.
Sure, it's gonna be a heavy lift for the town, there's no
Yep.
question.
Yep.
I am, I'm particularly concerned every time I hear someone, and that included Emily, repeat this line that it's just zoning, we don't have to build anything. Just because you zone it doesn't mean it won't get built. I really don't like that line of argument because I think it is inherently deceptive.
I agree 100%. Like, that's to me, like in economics, you talk about the $20 bill on the sidewalk. And in theory, no one can pick it up, but the reality is,
Someone's
the
gonna.
first person that walks by picks it up, right? Like, that's, you know.
yeah. I mean, the trick is to, I think, get clear what the notion of capacity means and what it may imply in the future. And I think there is an alarmist, we have to build 555 new units, smack on, people are gonna be smashing down houses. And that's one side, and then the other side is the happy little, oh, everything's okay. So I think we have to give people the facts of what the zoning means and chart a clear course and just say, there's some things we don't know right now too.
I certainly think you're right that we have to give everybody the facts. That really is important.
Yep.
However, I don't think those are the two sides. I think a lot of people understand that this is a zoning change and that, we're not just building units. People are going to be concerned about changes to their neighborhood. That's what they're gonna be concerned with. And we should just be very, I think, very humble in that, in the sense that we're forced to make these changes. And there are gonna be some people that are affected in a negative way. It's gonna happen. We can't avoid it. And we should just, I think, be careful to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's also true that if we don't do anything, people are gonna be affected.
I'm not trying to be gloom and doom, and I'm not trying, we all wanna do our job, and we all wanna do the best job.
Yeah.
But I just wanna keep tamping down, statements that make it seem like, statements like, are we already in compliance?
Answer
You
is
can't
no.
say things like that.
No.
No, I agree 100%. I take issue with that same sentence, which says, just because it permits the building of X number, doesn't mean it's gonna happen. It's like, well, realistically, it probably will, right? I mean, developers are, for-profit entities, and if they run the numbers, and that's what they're gonna do, right? I mean, that's what developers do. I mean,
Yeah, no, I think we have to expect we zone it, eventually it will happen.
yeah, I don't think that's fear mongering. I think that's being just
Yeah, it
fair and
happens,
honest.
it happens sometimes.
That's just being fair and honest and realistic. That's not being fear mongering.
No, I think the fear mongering is to say, we need 555 new units in town. And that's not a fact. So that statement we can say is wrong also.
Yeah, the 555 units is totally confusing. It's much simpler to say, we have to zone 17 acres inside the circle for up to 15 units of housing per acre by right, because that's what the
Yeah.
law
Right.
says. The
Right.
500 unit thing is, just drives me crazy. It immediately takes people to thinking about the units that are already there, which are irrelevant.
Or it takes people to
Well-
thinking about it's all gonna be new. So
Yeah,
it's,
that too.
both places are bad. I think the most important thing to get across to people is that we understand and are gonna be doing our darndest to basically kind of keep a lid on things to the extent it's possible and to preserve the character of the village. I mean, that's kind of the number one job. And that is gonna be difficult. But still, that's what we're trying to do.
I take your point. If the 500 or whatever number is not the precise number, I mean, in my brain, it's an estimate for sure, but there is a number that then, that company is gonna do the economic analysis. They're gonna need a number of units, right? Now, whether it's a perfectly scientific number, which of course it's not, but you know what I mean? They're gonna need a number to then back into all their assumptions.
But the point is that if there are 400 existing units in this district, and if the capacity has to be 555, that means we have the added units to be allowed are only 155.
It's a good point, Chris, and it brings us to another point, I think, which is that we are going to know at some point exactly how many new units we're
Yeah.
introducing.
Yes,
We're going to know that.
yeah, we will.
But we don't right now.
We don't have any idea.
We
Well,
have no
some
idea.
We don't really know. We have some idea because we know the existing density of the town.
Yeah.
I could tell you, but I'm not going to. I know approximately how. Just because I know what the density of the area is.
But we don't know what the district is, so that's gonna make a huge difference.
You look at the streets, there's not that many differences. There's a few. But it's important, I think, for us to always keep in mind that we don't have decisions made yet. We're gonna have to put those out to the town and people are gonna get a
Yes.
chance to comment on them.
Yeah,
And
Yes.
that's gonna be a tricky process for us, but it's an important one.
It's essential to the whole thing.
So that 500 and whatever number, where did that come? It came from somewhere.
If you had,
yeah, it comes from 37 acres that we have to zone.
Times 15.
Times 15 units per acre, so.
if we're building on a cow pasture, we'd
Right,
be adding 550 units.
but we're not a cow pasture.
But you could tear down stuff and replace.
Sure, but if you tear down units,
You don't
Just
wanna
gonna
tear
replace
down
them.
units.
you're just gonna replace it with another.
I mean, the way you get to the number of units we're gonna build is you look at whatever area you've zoned, you count up the units that are already there, and then you subtract it from 551. There's also some a question was raised in the meeting we had earlier today, which we don't have the answer on, which is whether or not we can average the areas outside the half mile with the areas inside the half mile, which is a huge question.
That is a huge
Yeah, I
question.
think you
What did
can,
she
as long
say?
as, I think as long as the overall density, the whole thing is 15 units per acre.
That is when we chase that down, that's going to tell us, that is a huge change.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, in terms of giving us the flexibility we'd like to have.
sure, and we can even zone things more dense outside the downtown.
Well, that would be the point. I mean, it would mean that you have that option.
All right, so I'll throw the 500 or whatever number out the window, because like you said, that only would matter if we're doing it on cow pasture. So if I had to do bookends, it's gonna be somewhere between like, I don't know, 100 and 400. Given the math, like you're saying, or you look at the existing and,
I think it's gonna be less than half of that.
all right, but my range might be wide, but
Yeah, I think it'll be tough to get over 300 actually, but who knows?
Right.
If we say everything's gonna be in the LCD, then it's gonna be 555
This-
units.
This lady this person we talked to this afternoon, I think can help us answer that question.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
And she can vet it with the authorities, which is valuable.
Yeah.
So, we need that answer, obviously.
Yeah, well, it all comes down to what areas we pick.
Yeah,
That's the only variable.
And the question is, do we want to put it in an area where we're actually putting the historic district at risk? Or do we want to put it in another area where it's less dense, so we have to build that, there are more potential new units, but will have less effect on the historic district?
yeah, no, that's,
good question.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly the question.
Lots to balance, lots to balance.
Okay. Next up on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes for September 21st.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure, yes, go ahead.
I just want to make sure before we start the thing on Saturday morning, you're gonna talk. We're gonna have coffee and pastries,
Before the talk and
and
after.
I'm gonna show up.
Yeah, we're all gonna hopefully be there.
Hopefully, other members of the task force.
Probably not Ann.
No.
Probably.
Did not show up.
Alas,
No way.
what you would do
No
to
way.
get out of another public
But
forum?
hopefully other members of the task force will be there. And I think we have to be, shall we say, circumspect about trying to stick to the facts as we know them versus making jokes, which I won't do. Or, sort of trying to envision or imagine or
We're not there
set
yet.
people's minds at ease or set people's minds in high anxiety or anything like that, just to try to be saying, hey, we're here. We all have the same intent, which is to protect our town and to follow the law as well as we can.
Yeah,
And we're using the resources available to us
and I
to do
think the
that.
walking part is important to show people that even though Elm Street is not at 15 units per acre, it's an example of higher density than
Right,
most people
Right.
have in their neighborhoods, and it doesn't
Mhm.
look bad, it
Right.
looks fine.
right.
Does anyone know what the density of Peel House Square is?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure Richard does.
Don't wait for me.
Yeah.
This is like the.
It's like-
Okay, and the other one the other one that's of interest is
$64,000 question where the guy goes into the isolation booth and has to answer.
Church.
the question.
on
yeah.
Church Street, there's another
Yep, there's another cluster.
nice cluster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are places
More
that look like Manchester.
Yes.
Morse
Morse
court
court.
also, Morse court has a lot of,
So Gar's house, for example, has got a density of 91 units.
Yeah, 91 units per acre. It's not that bad.
he's holding down his, he's doing his
Yeah.
part.
But I
can-
don't think we,
Tenants come out and say how comfortable it is in there.
The question
think
is, how do you zone to preserve that?
That's right.
That's the question.
I think the design guidelines are gonna be really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, and we don't, at this point, have funding for them in a forms-based approach afterwards.
Not the form base, but they are gonna provide us design guidelines, which will be very
Hmm.
oh, good.
I think form-based may be somewhat beyond the scope of this committee.
There may be some hybrid, we might be able to mix in some form-based into it if we feel it's appropriate later on.
My figure for Fieldhouse Square is 12.68
Units per acre.
Oh,
So-
6.
Close to what they're asking us for.
Okay, moving on to the approval of meeting minutes. We have two sets of minutes. There was September 7th, which we didn't approve last time because of
And edit.
some corrected edit. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
In favor? I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't there.
Aye.
Okay,
Anne says yes.
so, everyone except me, I'm abstaining. Approval of the minutes of September 21st, our last meeting.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay,
I'll move to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anne says yes.
Okay. So now I'm gonna open the meeting up for public comment. Any questions from? Oh, Sarah Melish is here. Sarah,
Oh, my gosh.
were you here for the whole time?
No, sorry, I was thinking 7:30. I just got through dinner with my mother.
Oh,
Oh, my good excuse. So just to let you know that we did get one proposal for consulting services.
Yeah, I looked at that.
Okay, and Gar and Richard and I met with Greg Fettersfield, we interviewed Emily. And we thought she did a pretty good job at the interview, so,
Oh, good. I like the fact that they were gonna do a financial review.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So we've recommended that Greg hire the firm and get started.
great.
Okay, any public comment?
anyone there?
Yes. Okay, hearing none. Any other, I don't have any other matters that we needed to discuss tonight, so.
Yeah.
I would just request that with regards to this consultant and the contract that, you know, we just get email updates, I assume from Greg in terms of how the process is going,
Yeah,
they accept, when do they start, blah, blah, blah.
yep, excellent idea. Yep, that's good.
Do we want to try and give the start date's a really important idea. Do we want to try and ask for a goal there?
I think we asked them to start as soon as possible. And she said she would as soon as they
Good.
got the contract.
That's great.
Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Second for that.
Second,
In favor?
aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Fabulous meeting, Chris.
Thank you.